Hi, I'm Peter Capaldi. I play the Doctor, and you're watching EMS Productions.
Hello everyone, welcome along to this week's Weird and Wonderful Wednesday for Doctor Who, where I do a random Doctor Who related video every single Wednesday. And this week, as you can see in the title, I'm going to be watching Timelash, the 1980s Colin Baker story. I've never watched it before, but of course I know the reputation for it being the worst Doctor Who story ever. So I'm going to take a watch of it, as you can see, got it all loaded up here, ready to go. And well, I'm gonna let you know, is it really that bad? Is Timelash really deserving of the mantle of worst Doctor Who story ever? I'm gonna go and watch and find out, and I'll let you know soon. Well, I've just finished watching part 1 of Timelash, and it's an interesting experience. It's just so utterly sort of uninteresting. It's not like some episodes where people find it offensive or horrific. It's just so dull, frankly. I mean, there's the whole plots of getting this amulet back. It's all just a bit pointless and we don't really care about it. The episode is completely full of annoying characters. There's literally no endearing characters in this episode at all. I mean, even the Doctor's pretty mean and grumpy. I don't really see why Perry would want to hang around with him in this episode because he's all just a bit horrible. You've got Tekka, who's just this strange sort of campy villain who kind of doesn't really do what he's actually going to say and is just not very nice in general. And you've got that weird Herbert guy from like 18th, 19th century Scotland or something, who's just this like ultra sort of posh guy who's just so uninteresting as well. And it's all just very dull and uninspiring and completely full of beige. Literally, there's just beige everywhere. Yes, it's something to do with like there's no shiny surfaces or something for some reason. I guess that'll get explained in the second part. But yeah, the whole thing, I'm not feeling any more positive than I was expecting about it, frankly. It is really just very, very dull. And, well, the music's terrible. I mean, it's just horrific. If I can find some, I'll stick it in the background of this. But it's just horrible, late 1980s bad Doctor Who music. There's that blue android guy who's got the most bizarre, horrible voice you've ever seen, or heard even. You wouldn't see a voice. Heard the voice, which is it's just very, very weird and, yeah, not particularly nice. And so, yeah, the first part that I've just finished watching is just it's not good at all. It really isn't good. And I've watched quite a lot of classic Who, and even the 1980s stuff. I think Trial of a Time Lord's quite good. Obviously Colin Baker's second season, and well, comparing Colin Baker from that to Colin Baker here, he's horrible in this episode compared to what he is in Trial of Time Lord. So it's not particularly. I don't really like him like this. He's a bit too mean and grumpy towards Perry and stuff, and just not particularly nice in general. So I don't particularly like that, and that clearly doesn't help the episode. But then you just add on top of it every other aspect that makes it dull and boring, and you've got Timelash Part 1, essentially. So, well, I predicted the cliffhanger literally 2 minutes into the episode. As soon as I saw the Timelash thing, I knew the cliffhanger was going to be the Doctor getting thrown into the Timelash because it's so obvious for a cliffhanger. So we got to that, and now it's time for Part 2. Well then, I've just finished watching Timelash, the mighty Timelash, just finished Part 2. And well, it wasn't... The ending wasn't completely terrible. I mean, well, it was kind of the Borad, the main villain, was essentially scared of his own reflection because he couldn't cope with the fact that he was some horrible mutation and that no one loves him and no one would care for him and no one would be his bride and all this kind of stuff. It's all just very rather strange motives and this kind of thing. So that was slightly unusual as an ending, and that's why obviously everything's so beige and matte and uninteresting, or you could explain it to be that way and get away with it, is because he can't bear to look at himself, so he can't bear any shiny surfaces, because then that would... So then he can't cope with who he really is, and he has to just scream and die, and then he gets chucked into the Timelash. And it all kind of ends. I mean, the Doctor nearly gets blown up by some missile that some other planet were at war with. The whatever this planet's called, hang on, what's the planet called? The Carfel, there we go, Carfel. Ooh. With the Carfel, this like planet, and some other planet was was wanted to wage war with them or something like that. I never really fully followed the whole plot and quite what the Borad wanted to do. Was it purely his sort of thing to try and get himself a bride, or was there actually something more to some sort of war or something? Because he was like kind of controlling the whole planet or something like that, and there was like monitoring the whole planet permanently on this kind of thing. It was all a bit strange and confusing and uninteresting, I think, in general, and it didn't make a great story overall. There's very few great things I can say about this, quite frankly, because it's just so uninspiring. One thing I did quite like the H.G. Wells bit at the end, where it because obviously, well, I haven't read it, but I know from sort of people's comments about it that this is takes a lot of ideas from various H.G. Wells books, and so I thought it was nice to link in the sort of that Herbert was actually H.G. Wells, and that his stories were inspired by a Doctor Who story. I thought that was, if not, that was quite a nice little sort of joke idea thing, I think. If nothing else, that was good about this episode. I did quite like that idea. And it was also the slightly strange sort of thing of the Doctor's been to this planet before, and he's had a story here before, but we don't really know about that. It was with the third Doctor, apparently, but it's never seen on screen. But then it sort of relies heavily on that throughout the story, and kind of like, so that he understands this whole world and everything that's already going on. And it kind of just sort of stretching your thoughts on it a bit, I think. And it just overall doesn't work that well. So it's hard to say whether it's the worst Doctor Who story ever, as a lot of people say it is. It's an interesting debate to have as to what is the worst. I mean, does it drop below the likes of Fear Her, In the Forest of the Night, Sleep No More, which I know a lot of people rate very, 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 very lowly? Does this drop below those? It's hard to say, really. It's not a good story, no. It's pretty bad. But whether it's actually the worst story ever, hard to say. Well, finally, I have the magical DVD box here. I spent a full £6 on Timelash to get this off Amazon so that I could do this video for you guys. So please do watch this and give it a like for that £6 that I spent on this, which has quite frankly been wasted. But whatever, I was probably going to collect them all eventually anyway, so that's just, I would have got this at some point, just maybe I got it a bit quicker than I planned. I mean, I own this and I don't own the Case of Androzani, and I don't own Dalek Invasion of Earth, and these classic stories that I don't own, and I own Timelash. So yeah, that's pretty good. And well, just purely looking at the sort of the box, you can kind of already tell that it's not going to be a good story. When, if you look there, that's the full size of the special features of this disc DVD, with all of one documentary on it. It's literally all the other stuff is just your generic Radio Times listings, production subtitles, production notes, photo gallery, and all this kind of stuff. There's only actually one proper special feature on it, which is the documentary, and that kind of tells you everything you need to know about how much effort they put into this story and to this DVD release. It kind of shows you there's not much more to say about this, really, is there? So, well, I'm going to go and watch the documentary and see if I pick up anything interesting, and then I'll come back for a final thoughts before I end this video. So, see you in a bit. Well then, I'm back. I've watched the documentary about the episode, 25 minutes of behind the scenes stuff about this classic story. And quite frankly, the best sort of things they could come up with in terms of why this isn't bad. I mean, Nicola Bryant just said, it's Doctor Who, so it's worth watching. And I think when you're having to come with that argument, you're probably stretching it to, is it a good story or not? And well, as I heard that the episode was too short by like 5 or 6 minutes, so they had to go and refilm a load of sort of scenes in the TARDIS and stuff, and that's where these terrible scenes at the beginning with the Doctor and Perry, where the Doctor's just all mean to her and stuff, I think came from, because they were rushed scenes, so that they don't know who wrote them, and they were rushed and not particularly well acted and not very good just generally. So that kind of makes sense why they weren't very good if they had to be thrown in at the end. And it did feel like at one point the Doctor was kind of going into 12 from Listen mode when he starts shouting at Clara and Listen. It did feel like half of that episode was kind of how the Doctor played this. How the Doctor's played it in this episode is kind of a lot like that, which isn't particularly good. I don't think that's one of the Doctor's best moves, best way of playing the Doctor, I don't think so. That just sort of compounded the problems And well, is it that bad? Probably yes. It isn't a good story. It's not helped by the reputation it's gained now, along with the Twin Dilemma. It's gained the reputation of being the worst of Doctor Who. Those two stories, essentially, they always get the bottom of polls. They're just generally rated as the worst of Doctor Who. And I think it's, at this stage, pretty much impossible to change that now because of the test of time of 30 odd years since these stories first came out, and they've built up that reputation. And so I think these are always just going to be very badly rated stories. And well, this one is bad. If you haven't seen it before, give it a watch. Why not? It's Doctor Who, as Nicola Bryant said, so you might as well give it a try. And the acting isn't all terrible. I mean, some of the performances are pretty weak, it's fair to say, but it's not all bad. The actual Barrod, I can't actually remember his name. I don't actually know his name. I've literally forgotten the name of the main villain of this episode. Shows how much I've enjoyed this story. But he has prosthetics is not too terrible on his face. It's not all bad. I mean, it's slightly although I could see the style they were going for in terms of building up the tension of not actually seeing his face for ages to try and sort of keep you interested in this kind of stuff. But it took them 66 minutes, an hour and 6 minutes into an hour and a half episode or story was when we first saw him, and then he seemingly dies 6 minutes later, and then he appears for the last 4 minutes, and that's about all we see of him. So we get approximately 10 minutes of him actually seeing his face on screen. So it's kind of felt a bit wasted, and kind of like they waited a bit too long to get him on screen. Particularly when they said they were running short with the episode. Surely they clearly had to pad it out to try and get it up to the right length, and it just all didn't work very well. So yeah, overall it's a bad story. There's nothing you can really, it's just bad. I tried to answer the question, is it really that bad? Yes, it really is that bad. I mean, I'd give it, I don't know, 3 out of 10 maybe, if I'm being generous. Is it worse than Sleep No More? And I think Sleep No More is a bit underrated. It's still pretty bad, but it's not the worst thing ever. And it's certainly, Sleep No More is definitely better than this episode. As is, I'd say, In the Forest of Night is probably down there towards this level of episode, you have to say. Along with sort of Fear Her, that's pretty terrible as well. All these sort of low-rated episodes. I've never actually watched the Twin Dilemma in full. I think I've seen the first part of Twin Dilemma. Just I ended up watching it randomly and then kind of never got on to finish it because it's so uninspiring as a story. With those two really brainy kids with ball cuts who are so dull and uninteresting, it's unreal. And Colin Baker's obviously strangling Nicola Bryant as well, so that doesn't really help start his tenure, does it? And so yeah, I've never actually watched that in full, but I know that that's quite a bad story, and maybe one day I'll watch it. Well, I will watch it one day, definitely, but not today and not anytime soon. And well, there you go, that's pretty much it. That's all to say on the mighty Timelash. It's pretty terrible, but give it a watch because it's Doctor Who. That's the best you can say about it. So, well, thanks for watching the video. Like it if you did enjoy my interesting thoughts on this episode. Subscribe if you're new here. Comment, let me know, do you like Timelash? Do you think it's the worst of Doctor Who? Or do you think it's not actually that bad? It could be bad. There is worse. Maybe you think that. Or maybe you think it's a classic, but somehow I think that's very unlikely. So let me know what your thoughts. And I'm Elliot, EMS Productions, and I will see you very, very soon. Someone soon. Maybe Friday? Someone soon for a new Doctor Who video. Goodbye.